What is the worst example of rich people problems you have seen? Had a former friend who went into despair because Hurricane Sandy flooded her living room of her childhood home. Told everyone she was homeless now, and she knew what it felt like to lose everything the way her Jewish ancestors did in World War II. Thing is, she had an apartment she lived in on the island. Her parents owned several more vacation homes up and down the coast. They were a little inconvenienced maybe, but far from homeless. One guy I know on the island lost a boat during Sandy, but ended up finding a different one in the middle of his house. A person I know only drinks Evian or Voss water because he is allergic to tap. Edit. I am not ripping on him for not drinking tap, but for only drinking what is regarded as luxury water. Edit 2. He lives in a wealthy neighborhood in America. Edit 3. Once again, I am perfectly fine with him only drinking bottled water. He may be allergic to something in tap for what I know. I just find it crazy that he will only drink certain kinds of bottled water. When I was in high school, my family was pretty poor, and I had a fairly rich friend. My single dad spent years saving up for us to go to Disneyland. We finally went when I was 16. Fast forward a year, my friend is going to Disneyland for Halloween break. Her dad told her to invite 2 friends. So she invited me and another girl. I was freaking stoked, but she kept saying, I don't know, it's probably going to be boring. My grandma takes me to Disneyland like every break. And when we got there, all she wanted to do was sit on benches and text. All of the rides were boring, and she'd already been on them dozens of times. It ended up being pretty boring for me because I didn't want to go on the rides without her. I knew someone who traded in his Porsche and bought a new one every year. His parents were wealthy, died when he was in his teens, and left him a multi-million-dollar trust fund. What was sad was that he felt that he couldn't pick up women without flashing his cash and expensive sports car, but he would dump them all in a couple of weeks because they were only into me for my money. Loneliest guy I ever met. Edit. He is not Batman. His parents died in a car accident, and his butler's name is Davin, not Alfred. Watch The Queen of Versailles. It's riveting and all about rich people problems. And it's not about Marie Antoinette, as the title would suggest. It's a documentary about a ridiculously rich family before and during the Great Recession and the effect that the housing crisis had on them. Edit. Whoops. I'm usually a stickler for effect versus effect. Edit. There you go. I actually fixed the error. My favorite was when she was at Hertz Rent-A-Car and asked the front desk guy who her driver's name was. The look on his face was priceless. Super yacht docked in Italy at a high-end marina. Owners wanted the bottled Perrier water for a party they were having in a day or two. They wanted the marina to supply them with a pallet of said water. Marina said it was against policy for them to get a pallet of water to their boat. So they get a private jet from America to fly in a pallet of said water and get it dropped to the boat. Price was about $28,000 as far as I remember. But even that amount seems low for that. My friend wants to marry her boyfriend. They're going to school in America, but are both from China. Her Beijing, him near Shanghai-ish. They both pay $60,000/year to go to high school here. However, she can't marry him because his family only owns 2 houses in Hangzhou, whereas hers owns 7 in Beijing. Frowny face. Edit. Rich people benefits. A lot of the other students simply buy their citizenship, obviously illegally, if they're not the brightest and can't get into the esteemed American schools their parents expect. Edit 2. OHP apparently one can legitimately buy their citizenship. Who knew? However, it seems like it takes a long time, whereas the students would be going to school here next year? I'm not sure of the details. Frowny face. Had a roommate in college from New Jersey, where both parents were very successful lawyers. When Sandy hit a few years ago, he was completely distraught. Their 3rd and 4th beach houses were ruined. Edit. I'm not saying rich people shouldn't feel bad about losing property. I'm simply saying that the mere possibility of losing your 3rd and 4th houses is probably a rich people problem. Edit 2. And now this is my top comment by far. Thanks, guys. Certainly wasn't expecting this kind of feedback when I wrote it. You're all awesome. I'm a nanny for a rich family. A few examples: when I get paid in cash, my boss says, man, now I'm gonna have to go all the way to the bank to get more cash. When they travel, they prefer 2-bedroom suites. One time they could only get a 1-bedroom, and he said, well, that just ruins the whole trip. My car got broken into, and I mentioned it felt so awful to drive it knowing someone was in it. His idea of empathizing? That happened to me. I had to buy a new one. Edit. Not wanting to go to the bank isn't the annoying rich thing. It was annoying rich thing because he had $500 still in his wallet, and it was annoying that he was complaining it wasn't enough money to have in his wallet. Edit 2. Some of you have asked me to do an AMA, so I am now up on /r/casual IMA. If you want to know more, please feel free to ask me anything. I live in the part of my country where internet is really expensive. 16 megabits per second plans are considered plans for extremely rich people. One fine day, one of my friends threw a fit at his dad because he was getting 15 megabits per second instead of 16 for like an hour. Holy shit, dude, I live on a 2 megabits per second connection, which turns into a 512 kbps connection after a 30 GB data cap. My neighbor is this really down-to-earth guy who managed to work his way from nothing to being quite wealthy. He has his own company and pulls in north of $200,000 per year. A few years ago, he married this beautiful brunette that can safely be said to be on the upper scale of maintenance cost. She was given perhaps too much freedom when they redecorated their mansion and ordered custom-made stairs that cost about $100,000, which were made of glass/steel. Once she had them installed, though, she noticed that they didn't really match her choice in furniture, so she had a virtually identical set of stairs made that only differed from the last set by a few shades of white. How this guy puts up with her bullshit is beyond me. My dad is a self-made millionaire. He accomplished it through hard work, and he raised me just as toughly as he didn't want me to depend on money. I have some experience with people of my status. One girl I know convinced her parents to move so she could be closer to the horse stable she liked to ride at. She upped her dad's drive to work, and her mom's and her little brother had to change schools in 8th grade, the worst time to pull a kid out. Get this though, she made her mom buy her favorite horse. She also would try and make me buy her a horse because I was rich and I didn't need my money like she did. I worked for a nonprofit that helped extremely low-income women start their own business. These women would give up food to scrape together enough money to join our program. One of our EDs said she wished she could relate to our clients more, but she has never been poor. She owned 2 homes in one of the most expensive zip codes in the US. Also, another woman whom I really did respect but not always agree with believed people chose to be in poverty. We would debate for days about that statement. I realized working there that people who run advocacy programs for poverty have no idea what it's really like. This is a problem because policy and lawmakers are looking at these institutions for advisement on drafting new social safety nets and welfare programs to help the working poor, and they just have no clue. It motivated me to go back and get a master's degree to fight this. I grew up super poor and can speak from experience, not theory. To know if this is a problem, exactly, but I was on the tube in South London and a bunch of young banker types in fancy suits were there with their equally well-dressed arm candy girlfriends. And one guy was like, "Everyone keeps telling me to get a Bentley, but I'm more of a Lambo man." This was at a point in my life where I was living off 1-pound boxes of pasta from Tesco, so it was a bit of a surreal moment. Young girl, about 5 years of age, getting ready to go into New York City to visit her grandmother, NJ suburbs. She was at her aunt's house and did not have a pair of shoes that she liked. She called her chauffeur, told him which pair of shoes she wanted. The dude got the shoes and drove some 20 miles to deliver them, and she told him he got the wrong ones and he was an idiot. No one in the family thought this was inappropriate. I'm not really rich, exactly, but I do pretty well. I'm a stripper. Earlier today, I was moderately irritated that I couldn't quite fit all my cash in my wristlet wallet. All the while thinking, why didn't I just swap these bills for $100s at work? This would be so much easier. Slightly peeved, I asked my boyfriend, "Have you seen my other purse anywhere around here? I can't fit all my money in my wallet." And after I said it out loud, it dawned on me. It was a pretty silly thing to be annoyed about. It's no fair. Strippers all get rich because they don't have to waste all that money on clothing. Wait. I was invited to a graduation party, hosted by a very wealthy couple whose daughter had just graduated from Yale. Her father came out in front of the guests, displaying his Rolex and Cartier watches, asking which one of the 2 expensive watches the group thought would be the more appropriate for the occasion. Everyone just looked at each other, silently, not quite sure what to say. My mom works at a Baptist church. The pastor makes somewhere between $90 to $100K a year with all his insurance and gas paid. He is rich as hell, owns 2 homes, and has a ton on money on top of the salary. When he takes mission trips and pastor conventions, he holds offerings to pay for his airfare and everything else. Meanwhile, other people that come with him pay their own way. This is a church full of poor and retired people. My mom's got a new boss at her not-for-profit domestic abuse prevention job. The woman didn't like the line of work and had even told some of her employees she was only there because she enjoyed not asking her husband for spending money, which is actually respectable. However, she didn't enjoy her work environment and had over half of the current staff replaced with people she felt better suited her work environment. Within 2 months of her arrival, 6 of the women earning less than $40K a year, most of which were single and dependent on the income, were let go, basically so this woman could find her workday more tolerable and so she could spend her money on non-essential shit. So my great-aunt and great-uncle are multimillionaires after my uncle sold his independent company. They are currently living in the Northeast while a few of their children live in the Midwest. Their daughter, in her mid-40s, is married to a man that has been struggling to keep a job for the last few years after being laid off due to the recession. In order to help their son-in-law get a job, they decided to open a franchise just to give him a job as a manager. Rich people problems. I don't see a problem with this, as long as the guy wasn't an asshole or something. If I were to ever get rich, this is probably how I'd handle all my close family and friends. Give them jobs instead of money. I had friends who had to break their phone. It was the latest iPhone model and perfectly working, but there was a newer one coming out that they wanted and their parents would only buy it if their other one was broken. I had to endure these kids throwing their phones against walls and being frustrated that their phone wasn't broken yet. Drove a client's wife home from the airport after the first big snowstorm in Boston this year. I felt so bad as she told me, "Oh, Roger is so sad. They could only clear the snow from in front of 2 of our garage bays. He wanted to take his BMW out, but he's stuck driving my Mercedes for another week." Oh, well, how does he go on? A former manager at work bought a Viper when they first came out, and he scared himself in it one day by oversteering a curve and essentially doing a 180 on a public street. His Land Rover Defender was in the paint shop, so he shows up to work in his Duesenberg Model J. Looked like a Nazi staff car in the manager parking spot. Bought their neighbor's house so they could live in it for 5 months while their Real house was being remodeled. Then they demolished it and put in pool. They were apparently billionaires. Edit. Also, Mrs. Homeowner was furious. "Eddie, I can't live like this." But the stone we were laying didn't exactly match the stone in their courtyard. 1. We don't pick out the stone, the homeowners do. 2. The stone she wanted didn't exist anymore, and she was aware of that fact. I live next to one of the greatest wealth per capita places in the world. A guy over on the island had the problem of his priceless art in his winter home being in vague danger from potential hurricanes, and he wasn't comfortable with the idea of it being moved out of the house when a hurricane was coming. His solution was to buy a decommissioned submarine and have it buried underneath his estate, then have a hallway built to it. And that's the place he puts his most valuable art pieces at this particular home, if there was an impending hurricane. A girl I know started a Kickstarter to pay off her personal debt, so she could achieve her goal of being debt-free by the age of 30, so she could focus on her art, which is photography. She spent her 20s traveling Europe doing art, which is photography. She grew up in a rich suburb with rich parents. She wants to focus on her art, which is photography. Some people just have it hard. We wouldn't understand the complex mind of a camera. Sorry, artist. Was at a marina in the Bahamas to do laundry, stock up on water and supplies with my 25-year-old beater sailboat. Was walking the dog when I met a guy walking his dog. He was off of a 140-foot boat with substantial, crisply uniformed crew and could not stop complaining how the Bahamas government had charged him $250 for a 6-month cruising permit/fishing license. Same rate I paid, by the way. He went on and on, how they don't have lighthouses, buoys, etc. He had to be paying that much to dock for the night, let alone crew and fuel. Boat probably cost $10 million or more. I ended the conversation by saying I had paid more than that for the bottom paint, which kept barnacles from growing on my hull. I work at a slightly better fast food restaurant, in that the company can't make up its mind whether it wants to be dine-in or takeaway, and the food is quite expensive. We get fairly rich people coming in all the time, and there's a group of 3 guys who come in all the time, and one guy out of them always pays for their food. Anyway, they order their usual shit and they go to pay, and one of the other guys offers to pay, and for some reason, the guy who usually pays gets really angry at this. Starts telling him to fuck off, and that is his thing to shout Nando's. The other guy gets really defensive and tries to hand me the 100 he's trying to pay with, and the main guy literally pushes his arm away and just stares at me. The guy just walks out telling him not to be such a dick. I don't even know, man, but please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.